Welcome to SmokeHouseStudios.net. The in-studio broadcast feed is now live.
Warning. This show is about the return of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. If you are easily offended by the truth, then you need to keep listening. His return is drawing near.
SmokeHouseStudios.net. The Front Porch Show. A unique blend of current events and what they might mean, humbly seen through the eyes of God's Word, the Bible, in an old-school front porch discussion with occasional guests, your input, and a guiding hand through Christ. Broadcasting from atop the front porch, it's SmokeHouseStudios.net's The Front Porch Show. Now, carefully blending more smoke goodness in each and every soundbite, your host, Smokehouse.
Well, hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, friends, wherever you may be across the globe and across the United States. Oh, Smokehouse with you here, SmokeHouseStudios.net. Front Porch Show, out here on this Saturday night, February the 1st, 2020. Where in the world has the year already gone? We're already through January, and now we're blazing into February with a whopping 45, 50 degrees for the first day of February, man, you know? And it's like, what's the deal? What's up with the weather? What's up with the earthquakes? What is up with the volcanoes that we see tearing up our lands? Friends, have you noticed that the earth is just shaking? Whether it be earthquakes, whether it be volcanoes, man, we have got a lot of things happening in the earth. We have a locust infestation in Africa that's been going on for the past couple of weeks. We're going to cover all of that and what that could possibly mean. I know you have been watching the news. You have been paying attention to all that's been going on with the impeachment trial in the Senate, the screaming and the yelling and the crying from the Democrats. We have been seeing speculation, falsehoods, and rumors all being regurgitated in repetition from the Democrats when nothing but fact, proof, and rooted truth coming from the Trump defense team. And you notice who takes the longest and who screams the loudest to get their point across, and who comes out calmly, quickly, and swiftly with the facts and the truth. The truth will always win. The truth will always succeed. And this is what we're seeing coming out of this impeachment trial in the Senate. We're going to cover that. We're going to cover some shenanigans that Chief Justice Roberts is pulling in this Senate hearing. We're going to go over a lot of what Trump's attorneys are doing. We're going to cover Rand Paul and the question that was denied that he submitted, the Chief Roberts denied the asking of. And we're going to cover just a whole lot. We're going to cover Bolton, Lamar Alexander. We're going to go more into Project Veritas to show the evil that lurks the closer we get to the elections. But the big thing, friends, I know that we think the hottest pot that boils upon the stove of life today is this impeachment. Is not. The biggest thing that is coming and just blowing off of the biblical pages right now, the biggest thing now is this peace treaty that was just signed this week with Israel. Friends, we have been covering this as closely as we can. We've been telling you there is a, as Trump has quoted, there is a deal of the century that is coming with Israel. And we have all been on the edge of our seat thinking this is it. This is the 7-year peace treaty. This is going to usher in the tribulations. And this week, this treaty was signed. And friends, if you if you felt a little confused about what transpired with Trump and Netanyahu and Israel, please don't feel alone. Because the minute this thing was signed, see, there were no leaks in the Trump administration. This is why the deep state is running crazy, because what Barr and John Durham are accomplishing right now, there are no leaks. So the deep state has no idea what's going on, and there has been no leaks coming out of this peace treaty talks. And so we have just been speculating up to this point. And now that the peace treaty is out, it's a 4-year treaty. It's confusing. Did Israel give up land? Did we force Israel to give some area to the Palestinians? It was very confusing, and it's been confusing for the last couple of days. But there was an article that came out in Breaking Israeli News, and there was a Dr. Raphael Mines who laid out some interesting things here. The first thing that we need to look at is when Daniel mentions that there will be a covenant of many, we have to look at the interpretation of that word. And when we go back to its root meaning, it's not as much as a treaty or a document or a promise made between two or between many nations. Its root meaning means it's something that's added to an existing promise or an existing treaty. And we've covered this several times. Back when Obama was president and he was trying to broker a peace deal, and he was talking with Israel, wanting to go back to pre-67 borders, the borders that Israel had before the 6-Day War. And in which case, that would either couple or be added to or something more to the Oslo Accord that President Clinton had signed back during his term. So we were looking under Obama's administration as something being added to the Oslo Accord, this being the peace treaty, okay? So, being confused now is nothing to really be ashamed of. I have talked to my biblical scholars, and they were as well. They're like, man, we're going to have to let the dust settle on this and see what we come up with. But I want to share this information with you, and I believe it's going to shed a lot of light. Now, we have never on this program said that President Trump is the modern-day Cyrus. What we have said is, as President Trump goes along, let's take a look at everything that happens, test it against the Word of God, the prophecy of Cyrus that Isaiah prophesied about the Persian king Cyrus, liberating the Jewish people from captivity, their 70 years of bondage in Babylon, to send them back to Israel, and let's see if it parallels as we go along. And that's what we have done, and tonight will be no different. So we're going to open with the meat of this peace deal. And it seems to be akin to the decree that King Cyrus had, paving path for the third temple. If we read Isaiah 44:28, it says that, am the same who says of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, he shall fulfill all my purposes. He shall say, O Jerusalem, she shall rebuild, and the temple you shall be found again. So many have seen the similarities between the biblical King Cyrus and President Trump. But while people on both the Arab and the Israeli side are still considering the possible implications of President Trump's deal of the century that was revealed Tuesday, Israeli declared, they declared it to be the declaration of Cyrus in our time. Now, we know that Israel and the Sanhedrin Okay, the Sanhedrin to Israel is Israel's Supreme Court. The Sanhedrin has recognized Trump as a Cyrus type for Trump moving the embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's eternal capital. Trump has recognized the Golan Heights to be that of Israel's domain, their territory. So the Sanhedrin has developed a half-shekel coin, and on it is the profile of King Cyrus and the profile of Trump, acknowledging Trump as a modern-day Cyrus. But this Dr. Mines, he quotes by saying that he hears echoes of a Persian King Cyrus's decree that paved the way for the Jews to build the Second Temple almost 2,000 years ago. Now, no, this deal of the century that they have signed, it does not have a temple built in it. But what we're going to look at here is the first thing that is similar between Trump's deal of the century and King Cyrus's proclamation is that both of them are non-Jewish political figures who are coming in the name of the God of Israel in order to advance the divine plan upon the Jewish nation. Now, this may be the reason why Trump's deal is uncomfortable for the Israelis and Israeli politicians, who certainly are not used to this in their political realm. There are very few Israeli politicians who act this way, certainly not secular politicians and not even the religious politicians either. But in a Facebook post, this Dr. Mines went into detail about what he meant. And I'm going to share this with you. Dr. Mines, quote, "I have always called to apply Israeli sovereignty on all the land of Israel, including all Judea and Samaria, which we know as the West Bank. And this has always encountered fierce opposition. We can't expect the President of the United States to propose an offer that no Israeli government, in fact, no party in the Knesset has ever proposed. So, in fact, in this action until now, in the last meeting, the President of the United States has been revealed to be a greater advocate of this than the Prime Minister of Israel. And Trump offered to apply sovereignty to all Judea and Samaria, which Netanyahu did not even consider." End quote. And Dr. Mines noted a very important detail about Trump's deal, and he shared this, quote, "Trump's deal does not require us to recognize Arab sovereignty in Judah and Samaria. Such recognition will only be required if the leaders of the Arabs accept all the conditions of the deal. And with the conditions that Trump established, there's no way that they'll accept the terms. So to be honest, I have no doubt that Trump actually opposes a Palestinian state, which is good. We do not want to give land. We do not want to divide Israel's land. And there is no doubt that Trump actually opposes this Palestinian state, surely more than Bibi. And it's clear to me that the purpose of this deal is to strengthen Israeli sovereignty and to bring to the end the revolting idea of a Palestinian state. Now, on this issue, he says that I trust Trump more than Bibi Netanyahu. And Dr. Mines told Breaking Israeli News that just as the declaration of Cyrus was accepted by only a portion of Israel, but was a catalyst for the Jews to build the Second Temple, Israel today should take Trump's deal as the ticket that opens up a greater future for Israel. Now, right here, that's end quote. Now, right here, I want to add my take on this. Every time we look at a Cyrus prophecy when it's in regards to Trump, we only go to Isaiah 45. I mean, that's the Cyrus prophecy right there. But we fail to remember that the prophet Ezra also prophesies about Cyrus and what Cyrus was to do. And we shared this back during this past Passover. Let me get you caught up. Ezra, understand now, the Jews had been in captivity in Babylon for 70 years. God had anointed Cyrus to come into Babylon and release the Jewish people and send them back to Israel. God anointed King Cyrus. He went in front of King Cyrus. He broke down all the strongholds of King Cyrus. He says that basically King Cyrus is going to just plow through anything that gets in his way because God is with him. And Cyrus's duty, even though Cyrus didn't know God, his duty was to do what God had him anointed to do, which was release the Jewish people in their 70th year and send them back to Israel. Isaiah says that King Cyrus will subdue all nations. Has Trump been subduing all nations? Does it appear that anyone that comes after Trump or lays a hand on Trump doesn't succeed? Does it appear that God could be going out in front of Trump and removing the strongholds? Here we are, Israel's 70th year last year, and Trump does all this recognition. I say last year, to the May of 2018. And look at all Trump has done for Israel from that time. And it was right there at the end of Israel's 70th year when Ezra comes to Cyrus and says, look, man, you're about to bust these people out. I'm paraphrasing. You're about to bust these people out. So since all of these people are coming back to Israel, I need some volunteers to kind of come back early with me. Can you afford me some volunteers? And we remember that it was Jeshua and Zerubbabel that volunteered, yeah, man, we'll go back with you. So they go back to Israel with Ezra while Cyrus is still in Babylon preparing the Jewish people to go back to Israel. But Jeshua and Zerubbabel go back with Ezra, and they begin preparing Israel for the coming others. And what did they do while they were there? It was that Passover that was coming up that Ezra, Zerubbabel, Jeshua, they built an altar. It was a huge altar, and it was going to be the altar that goes into the new temple. And when the Jews were released and back into Israel, they had a sacrifice on this altar. Now, the second temple hadn't been built yet, but the altar was. And there, when they sacrificed that, they said that this blood covers all the Jews. And then it was some years after that Passover that they built the second temple. Now we move to right now. The Sanhedrin of Israel, this past Passover, they had legalized blood sacrifice. And they had built this huge altar this past Passover. And this altar that they have built will be going into the third temple. We're seeing a major parallel here. And this past Passover, they had their blood sacrifice on this altar. And when they had this sacrifice, they said that this blood covers all the Jewish people. Exact same thing happened as it did back during the days of Cyrus. So Cyrus did not take upon himself to actually act for the Jewish people. Neither did Trump. And he did not build the temple, or he didn't reinstate the Davidic dynasty. All he did was enable the Jews to act independently. This is precisely what Trump is doing right now in this deal of the century. He's not giving Israel any gift, and he's not forcing anything upon them. He's telling them to do what is right, an obligation to do in their country, and he's doing so without any preconditions. Trump said that it is Israel's right to express their sovereignty in Judah and Samaria. So the only thing limiting the Jews now has been themselves. And by Trump acknowledging that in this deal, stepping aside and telling them to act as an independent nation, something that they have failed to do up until now, especially regarding the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, it's fitting that they should have done so and would have prevented all the difficulties up until now. But they didn't. And now Trump is telling them to act as a nation, act as a nation should. They can only hope that the Israeli government will listen to an outside party. So what's the similar responses here? Just as many people didn't necessarily view this Trump deal as favorable, this was also true when Cyrus proclaimed that the Jews could return to build the second temple. See, most of the Jews back then, they opposed Cyrus's decree. They didn't understand that it was his decree that would bring about the second temple. And the Jews who supported Cyrus, they acted on his decree. They were less successful segments of the Jewish community. So the poor and the powerless with no status in the Babylon society. So this also seems to be the case today. Let's take a look. That the Jews who look for their own personal short-term goals, they're staying in exile. They're staying in that form to Trump's political views. Now, in general, this deal in particular is precisely what will take the Jews there. He opened the door for them to do what they need to do. And despite all the shortcomings, Cyrus's proclamation, it paved the way for the second temple, and the same might be said about Trump's deal. Now, we don't know what's in the future with Trump's deal, but this is what it's shaping up to be. And the responsibility right now is up to the Jewish people. Now, this isn't the first time that Trump has been compared to King Cyrus. I shared with you the Passover and the building of the altar. But this expectation regarding Trump was first expressed, like I said, by the Sanhedrin after his election. This is before Trump really did anything. It was after his election, the Sanhedrin, Israel's Supreme Court, they compared him to Cyrus. Let's look at Ezra 1 and 2, since we went into Ezra a little earlier. Ezra chapter 1, verse 2 says, "Thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth hath Hashem, the God of heaven, given me, and he hath charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem, which is Judea." There was a Rabbi Berger. He's the rabbi of King David's tomb on Mount Zion. He said that, like Trump's connection to the Messiah is that we play a role in one major function of the Messiah. He will pave the way for building the third temple. And Trump will not personally merit building the temple, he continued. Like Cyrus, he's going to pave the way for men who will begin the construction. And when the time is right, the third temple will descend from heaven. Now, the important thing to all of this is that Netanyahu actually agrees with this. And it was quoted that in a powerful detour from political platitudes, the Israeli prime minister waxed biblical, comparing the American president to the Persian King Cyrus. In the long sweep of Jewish history, there have been a handful of proclamations by non-Jewish leaders on behalf of our people in our land. Take a listen to this. There was Cyrus the Great. Okay, we know what Cyrus did. He was the great Persian king that we just described, releasing the Jews out of captivity. And then there was Lord Balfour. There was President Harry S. Truman. And now there is President Trump. Aha, let's take a look at this. Okay, we already know what Cyrus the Great did in regards to the Jewish people in Israel. But who is this Lord Balfour? Let that sink in. We have all, or you should know, about the Balfour Declaration. What that was a public statement issued by the British government in 1917 during the First World War, announcing support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people. And it was there that the Ottoman Empire reigned was a small minority Jewish population. What was World War I really about? I know what we've been told in our history books it was about. World War I was about ridding the earth of the Ottoman Empire. If you're unfamiliar with the Ottoman Empire is, it was back in the late 1400s, 1500s, back during the Spanish Inquisition that happened when Columbus, you remember, set sail across the ocean blue in 1492. You know, we've been lied to in our textbooks and in our teachings. You know, Christopher Columbus was out one day on a castaway tour. Oops, he just stumbled upon America, and there it is. No. See, the Muslims had risen up in Spain. The Muslims had risen up in Spain, just like ISIS did a few years ago in the Middle East, and they started slaughtering Christians and Jews, as they always do in certain periods of time. And Christopher Columbus's job was to set out and find a land of safety for the Jewish and the Christian people. This group later became, probably was at that time, but in the 1500s became the Ottoman Empire, and they reigned all throughout the Middle East, pillaging and doing what they do so well up until the 1900s. And it was World War I that finally dismantled and broke up the Ottoman Empire, and the Balfour Declaration commenced, which allowed governments to say, okay, the Jewish people need their territory. Henceforth, the Balfour Declaration. Then comes President Harry S. Truman. And what was Truman famous for? World War II. It was after World War II, right there toward the close, that David Ben-Gurion, I'm sorry, name slipped my mind. David Ben-Gurion signed the peace treaty, May the 14th, 1948, that established Israel as a nation. Prophecy was fulfilled, okay? Prophecy of the Ezekiel 37, the dried bones prophecy, there began to start becoming fulfilled, okay? All right, with that being stated, it was asked of President Harry Truman, okay, this area that we're going to go ahead and give the Jewish people, what are we going to call it? And what did Harry S. Truman say? He asked a question. He said, what does the Bible say? Well, sir, the Bible says that it should be called Israel. And Harry Truman says, then we shall call it Israel. Wow. Can you believe a government? A government at that time? And you wonder why the 50s were such golden years, prosperous, and being blessed by God. You know why? Because when a question was asked of the American government leadership, he referred to the Bible and asked, what does God say? Now, there's a whole sermon that'll preach just on that alone. But he said, what's the Bible say? Well, sir, the Bible says it should be called Israel. Okay, well, then we'll call it Israel. And then we come to President Donald J. Trump. And look at what Trump has done for Israel. So regardless of whether or not Trump is a modern-day Cyrus is irrelevant. You put Trump on the platform with these other individuals, whether he's a Cyrus or not doesn't matter. But is he anointed by God to place Israel in the next place Israel needs to be for what God has in store? You better believe it. Let's go back to the Balfour Declaration, 1917 to 1918. What else was going on at that time? I know the war was going on, World War I, but what else was going on? They had a pandemic. They had a pandemic of global realm. Understand that back then, they did not have global travel like we have now, or to the extent that we have now. But yet, a pandemic spread the globe that was killing millions, known as the Spanish flu. And here we are, just a mere 100 and so years after that, another mighty man moving Israel into the next position that it needs to be. And what are we facing, looking down the barrel of right now? Another possible pandemic, which we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of that as well in this program. So, friends, this was an important week. Aside from the impeachment nonsense, aside from everything, let's step back and take a bird's eye view. The hatred and the seething poison that is coming from the demonic left. We don't battle the flesh. We're not battling people here, friends. We're battling powers, principalities, and spiritual wickedness in high places. What are principalities? The definition of principalities is government, rulers, governors. We're battling principalities here. The earth is reacting to this. When good and evil, when this battle that's in heaven of good and evil manifests itself on the earth regurgitates. The earth is part of this, and the earth is showing itself in this battle as well. I know that we're seeing such a rise of evil right now, but it is met with the rise of goodness. And we need to be on the side of goodness. But friends, we're experiencing it everywhere. In our governments, in the people of these governments, the citizens in these governments, the animals are feeling it and affected by it. The earth is reeling. There's earthquakes, there's volcanoes, there's plagues of locusts happening right now in Africa. This is real. And this is being orchestrated by God Almighty. Friends, it's time to get on board the train. It's time to get on board the train, because when we return, we're going to carry you through some information that we have acquired about a month ago that seemed to play out at Trump's rally Tuesday night. And we're going to go into detail about what that may be. And seeing how the Democrats are acting right now, all the resignations that are happening in high places, CEOs and leaders of these companies are just quickly now resigning and disappearing. We're going to talk about a battle that happened at Turtle Gut in Wildwood, New Jersey back in 1776 at the hands of our great President George Washington. You don't want to go, and you don't want to miss this. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this.
Smokehouse.
To talk to Smokehouse, dial 712-770-3857. That number once again is 712-770-3857. 877-344-5757. Then dial 252-380, followed by the pound sign. Call in to join the show.
SmokehouseStudios.net. God is among us. The door to the ark is slamming shut.
They want to paint Trump supporters as neo-Nazis and white supremacists.
As though it's nothing but white rednecks and hillbillies out here who care for the Second Amendment. When actually, black Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, Americans in general care about the Second Amendment.
These white politicians.
Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47.
In leftist-run cities want to take away black women's rights to protect ourselves. I just think it's ridiculous.
That's what they do. It's like a mascot. They put you in front, and then they run their agenda on the back.
When you look at the history of gun control, it was used to take away guns from minorities and the black men and women who just wanted to protect their family. If anything, you would want black men and women to be able to protect their families from anybody trying to break in.
It all started with them taking away your guns. You can't protect yourself. You're gonna, okay, it's fine for the police to protect you, but what if they can't get to you fast enough?
A bunch of gang members storming into a jewelry store. Shots are fired right there. The woman behind the counter opened fire. Whew, are they running fast?
Listen, if they steamroll the Second Amendment, they'll steamroll everything else.
Simply, we just want to hold on to our rights to protect ourselves. We're definitely here to show that there's unity because the media will play and act like we don't deal with each other very well. We won't come together, but you can look around. I've seen people from all walks of life today.
I'm here because I love this country, and if the Democrats are able to do away with the Constitution, a temporary ban on the Constitution, come on, never heard of.
Yeah.
Everyone should be terrified of that.
You need to be prepared to protect what's yours at all times.
United we stand, right? Right. White, black, Hispanic, Latino, Mexican, whatever. United we stand.
Are you willing to lay down your life to protect the Second Amendment and your right to carry?
Definitely. Why wouldn't I be? I mean, that'd be the perfect thing to give my life up for. It's something my family would be honored about.
I'd love to die for my freedom.
Would you be willing to lay down your life to protect the Second Amendment and your right to carry?
Absolutely. That's why I'm out here.
Are you willing to lay down your life, not only for the Second Amendment, but for Christ? I mean, I know the Second Amendment right now in the physical sense is important, but are you willing to go that length for Jesus? That's a decision you're going to have to make, friends. But so why are the left now? It seems, I mean, they've always wanted to come after our guns. We get that. They've always done that. Even 50 years ago, they were trying to limit our access to firearms. But why in the last 6 months to a year has there been this mad rush? Why has there been this mad rush now to hurriedly disarm us? Now, I'm not talking about trying to institute this little chipping away at our rights type of laws. I'm talking about blatant, in-your-face, unconstitutional laws that are passing all of these leftist states. Why does the left want us disarmed so bad? Question. Could it be maybe some information that's going to be surfacing to the American people that the left is afraid and American people find out the truth, that they may be wanting to use their Second Amendment right for defense? I don't know. We cannot predict the future, friends, but what we do know is that all that we are doing now is happening quickly. All right. A year ago, yes, you can call in, Jane Lee. I see your comment. If you would like to call in, I will shoot you the number here in just a second. But let's take a look at some things here. All right. last month, we were shown a photograph of the iconic painting of George Washington and his troops in that famous boat crossing the Delaware. We've all seen it. But a question was asked a month ago, what was the name of that boat that they were in? How many of you have ever thought to think, well, let me know what brand that boat was? Well, if you research the name of that boat, the brand name of boat that George Washington and his troops were actually in was called a Durham boat. Interesting, because we have a John Durham, who's a state prosecutor, that has been hired by William Barr, our Attorney General, to look into the criminality of all that the corrupt have been doing. And John Durham is coming, possibly toward the end of spring to the beginning of summer. It's John Durham coming with the criminal indictments. Now, there are many skeptics that say, man, nothing's going to happen. These people have been corrupt for years and nothing's going to happen. Hey, maybe not. I don't know the future. But they'll be known by their fruit. And look how scared the corrupt are getting. Look how sloppy the corrupt are getting to try to divert and stop what's coming their way. Okay, so many guessed. Okay, so you're saying that this boat is the Durham boat. Could this be making reference to a John Durham? Because what did George Washington and his troops do? They crossed the Delaware that night in that sneak attack on the coast of New Jersey against the British in a Durham boat. The Durham boat was the vessel. Durham was the vessel that brought this sneak attack. Notice that nothing ever leaks out of the Trump administration. Nothing. Nothing ever leaks. Okay, so a month goes by, people are speculating, and then we get reports that, yeah, you were right. Your speculation was right. Trump was making reference to a John Durham, by mentioning the Durham boat. And then 4 hours before Trump's rally Tuesday night in Wildwood, New Jersey, that picture surfaces again with that note on there stating that, yes, think of John Durham, think of these things when they started. And a few hours later, Trump then has his rally in Wildwood, New Jersey. And right in the middle of everything, you know, his normal rally cry that he does, Trump just stopped and shared some interesting information. Let's take a listen to what he said.
New Jersey is the state where George Washington led a die-hard band of American patriots to victory at Trenton and Princeton and Monmouth in our glorious battle to win American independence. George Washington. This is the state where generations of tough and strong New Jersey craftsmen and dockers, farmers and factory workers.
So Trump, from out of nowhere in Wildwood, New Jersey, mentions George Washington, mentions that battle, and along that whole beach line of Trenton, New Jersey, all the way up through to Wildwood, he brought to light that battle. There's a plaque out there, actually, that tells the history of that battle. And interestingly enough, when you go and you research what happened in that battle, in that sneak attack that night, when the Durham vessel brought that attack in 1776, we find the Battle of the Turtle Gut. And it was in that battle, there was an exchange, a massive amount of exchange of cannon fire and rifle fire. I'm sure hand-to-hand combat. It was a nasty battle. The British were firing upon a ship that was right off the coast of Wildwood and was just blowing holes all in that ship. And the crew members of that ship were doing everything that they could do because they were trying to get the boat to shore, and they were doing everything that they could do to pull all valuables off this boat, whether it be rifles and gunpowder and whatever else. And that ship ended up sinking that night. And the name of that ship was called Nancy. Friends, you can't make this up. Question. I'm leaving it to you, the listener. Are we being told something here? Are we being told that when Durham comes and lays out the criminal indictments, that Nancy Pelosi and all of her crew members, it's going to sink them? Is that what we're being told? Interesting theory, is it not? And why, of all times right now, did Trump go to Wildwood, New Jersey, and bring up that situation? Interesting. Interesting indeed. All right, friends. So the rage continues. They're doing everything under the sun now that they have nothing. No evidence is coming into the Senate to impeach Trump under no circumstances. Nothing. Okay? And they are grasping at straws. It's as though, we've shared this before, this analogy, but have you ever seen an animal that is in the death throes, right there at the point of death? They're gasping for air, and they're trying to claw and reach for anything just to grab and maintain that last moment of life. This is what we're seeing, and we're seeing it via John Bolton. Now, apparently, allegedly, John Bolton is writing a book, and how convenient some of the manuscript of this book gets leaked to the media. Okay? And now the Democrats, well, we've got to get John Bolton in there and testify. And all of the liberal media, they're all on board with this. Check this out.
All right, let's get back to the breaking news right now. New details from the New York Times about what is in that book coming out from the former National Security Advisor, John Bolton.
And this account, once again, puts President Trump at the center of the Ukraine pressure campaign, just hours before we expect the Senate to acquit him on the articles of the impeachment. One of the reporters who broke this story, Maggie Haberman from the New York Times, is on the phone. Maggie, tell our viewers what you've learned.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Mike Schmidt and I are reporting that John Bolton, in his new manuscript for this book that he's trying to publish, that the White House is trying to stop, at least for now, he describes a discussion in early May in the Oval Office that included Mick Mulvaney, the White House Chief of Staff, Pat Cipollone, the White House counsel, Rudy Giuliani, the president's personal lawyer, and John Bolton, and that Giuliani was talking about these various investigations that they wanted, as we understand it, into some of the president's Democratic rivals, including Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden.
And there you have it. Oh, they've got the details on all of this. It's the real deal, man. When this manuscript comes out, and this is the fact, this is the truth, this is what's going to sink Trump, and they were just begging for him to testify. And many of the Republicans, well, not many, but a few of them, Mitt Romney, hey, even Lamar Alexander of Tennessee was wanting to vote for these bogus witnesses. Bogus witnesses. But apparently, if you read his thread on all of his social media, Tennesseans basically said, don't do it. Don't do it. And apparently, Lamar Alexander has changed his tune because he is not voting for more witnesses. But then a video surfaced, an interview that John Bolton had not too long ago. Listen to what he said about the actual phone call back then, before any of this surfaced about his book.
Do you plan to meet President Zelensky, and what messages did you bring to him?
Well, I will be meeting President Zelensky. He and President Trump have already spoken twice. The President called to congratulate President Zelensky on his election and then on his success in the parliamentary election. They were very warm and cordial calls. We're hoping that they'll be able to meet in Warsaw and have a few minutes together because the success of Ukraine, maintaining its freedom, its system of representative government, a free market economy free of corruption, and dealing with the problems of the Donbass and the Crimea are high priorities here, obviously, but high priorities for the United States as well.
Oh, the phone call was just so warm and coddly and cozy. There was nothing wrong. So what was John Bolton actually going to say? I mean, he was going to be committing perjury if he said anything different than was in that interview. Well, what did they have up their sleeve? That's the scary part, man. They're already throwing their Hail Marys everywhere you turn. And even Lamar Alexander was going to vote for more witnesses to string this out and blah, blah, blah. But then he changed his tune. Check this out.
Tennessee Republican Lamar Alexander, one of 4 GOP senators, weighing the question now of new witness testimony, issuing this statement. I worked with other senators to make sure that we have the right to ask for more documents and witnesses, but there is no need for more evidence to prove something that has already been proven and that does not meet the United States Constitution's high bar for an impeachable offense. House Impeachment Manager Jerry Nadler saying that makes no sense.
This is a trial. As a trial, as any 10-year-old knows, we should have witnesses. That's why all these distractions. That's why the president's people are telling you to avoid witnesses, because they are afraid of the witnesses.
What are we afraid of? The witnesses are bogus, man. This is all a show, a charade. He's going to be acquitted. Lindsey Graham was on. I didn't share this clip because Lindsey Graham, it looked like he had a little nip of gin last night. He wasn't drunk by any means, but it looked like he was in a good mood, and his language was very colorful, and I cannot believe that Fox News let it not just slip out uncensored once, but twice. But anyway, nonetheless, and Lindsey Graham basically said this is a sham. We're going to do what we're called to do until Wednesday. He will be acquitted, and then bam, we're going full-blown after Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, which I have some news on Hunter Biden. As you know, Hunter Biden had fathered a child from a stripper down in Arkansas, and she went and thank you, Miranda. Hey, thank you for listening, girl. But she had gone for child support. So, because the DNA came back positive, so she goes for child support, and the judge grants it. He calls for Hunter Biden's last 3 years of financial records so that they could calculate child support, just like any other child support hearing. But Hunter Biden didn't want to do that. He didn't want to release his financial records. And so the judge says, okay, well, in that case, now instead of wanting 3 years, now we want 5 years. That's going to take him back to the Obama administration, back when he was getting all that money from the Ukraine. Now what's he going to do? So he starts dragging his feet on that. Okay, well, the latest now on Hunter Biden is the judge has given him till March the 1st to get all of his ducks in a row. And in the meantime, Hunter Biden has agreed to a certain amount to pay this lady up until March the 1st. But March the 1st, he's either going to have his 5 years of financial records, or he's going to be found in contempt of court and possibly go to jail. So what's going to happen when he releases these financial records? Is he going to be able to hide them? What's going to come of that? Man, we're going to have to wait and see. We're going to have to wait and see. Crazy, crazy times that we live in. And then we have Senator Rand Paul. See, they're still playing games. This is how bad they want Trump out of there. So, they'll be known by their fruit. Okay? They'll be known by their fruit. I know a lot of people saying, oh, well, nothing's going to happen to them. Nothing ever happens to them. Well, we have a new sheriff in town. Miranda Chickenhawk said, hello. We have a new sheriff in town, and they're really acting scared now. So if nothing is going to happen to them, and they would know this, why are they acting the way they're acting? That tells me that, yeah, something different is brewing now, okay? But anyway, Senator Rand Paul, it's the Senate's opportunity now. The House had their opportunity to play their games, which they did. They had their illegal meetings in secret and made up documents and all that. And now it's the Senate's opportunity. And this is supposed to be a legitimate, real. Justice Roberts is supposed to be there. And the senators are to submit questions that they want to ask. And Rand Paul submitted a question and had handed it to Judge Roberts, and Judge Roberts denied the question. We, the American people, didn't even know what the question was until later when Rand Paul came out and had a press conference and told us what the question is. Keep in mind here that nobody, including Adam Schiff, knows who this whistleblower is. But every time you mention the name Eric Ciaramella, everybody goes nuts. You start getting censored on YouTube. You start getting censored on Facebook. You start getting censored on Twitter. That name, Eric Ciaramella, was in Rand Paul's question, and boom, just as Judge Roberts says, you can't even speak that name. You can't even speak that name. Check this out.
Mr. Chief Justice.
Senator from Kentucky.
I have a question to present to the desk for the House Manager Schiff and for the President's Counsel.
The presiding officer declines to read the question as submitted.
As you may have noticed, we had something slightly atypical downstairs. I asked a question, and the question was refused. Now, it's been reported that this question's about this or about that, and it's been refused for one reason or another. I can tell you that my question made no reference to any whistleblower or any kind of person, a complainant from a whistleblower. But I will read you the question so it can be made part of the public record. Manager Schiff and Counsel for the President, are you aware that House Intelligence Committee staffer Sean Misko has a close relationship with Eric Ciaramella when at the National Security Council together? Are you aware, and how do you respond to reports that Ciaramella and Misko may have worked together to plot impeaching the president before there were formal House impeachment proceedings? I think this is an important question, one that deserves to be asked. It makes no reference to anybody who may or may not be a whistleblower. The Manager Schiff says he has no knowledge. If he has no knowledge, the rest of us can have no knowledge of who the whistleblower is. The President's team says they have no knowledge of who the whistleblower is. I think it was an incorrect finding to not allow a question that makes no reference. It means that anybody ever said might have been a whistleblower could never be discussed in a proceeding. I think it's very important whether or not a group of Democratic activists, part of the Obama-Biden administration, were working together for years looking for an opportunity to impeach the president. With that, I'll take a few questions.
Well, I can't tell you who the whistleblower is because I don't know, but I can tell you who the whistleblower should be. It should be every one of us. Every one of us should be willing to blow the whistle on presidential misconduct.
Nobody knows who the whistleblower is. Nobody. Even Adam Schiff claims he don't know who the whistleblower is. But every time you mention this Eric Ciaramella, because, why? During one of the Democrat charades back when the House had control and they were having one of their hearings, Adam Schiff actually said that Eric Ciaramella was the whistleblower. Oh, but they covered that up. They had to sweep that under the rug. Well, who is this Eric Ciaramella? He's involved in much darker things than you can imagine. Joe Biden, John Brennan, Barack Obama are also in it. The Ukraine Holocaust. This Eric Ciaramella obviously has his hands in on all kinds of things. And so what was he just being used in name only? This is why they didn't want to have him testify. Was this being name only? I don't know. I don't think we're ever going to know. However, with their actions and the way things are going, it does appear that there are some exciting things coming down the pike. We'll have to wait and see, folks. Stay tuned is all I can tell you. Oh, interesting. All right, well, let's go to the phone lines there. We're going to take a call. And welcome to the Front Porch Show. You're live on the radio.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to... I like your show. This is the first time I ever called.
Okay, well, who we got here?
My name's Billy Bob.
Billy?
Just kidding. I always wanted to do that.
Well,
did I throw you for a loop?
The 3-second timer was about to click off there, brother.
Oh no, I'm being spammed.
Yeah.
No, I was just kind of chuckling to myself when I was thinking about old Bill Clinton and him fathering that kid there in Arkansas with that woman, that prostitute. I go, man, it's amazing how they're kind of, Biden's son, they're all kind of in the same group there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's how the cookie crumbles, man. I mean, they're all in this together. By the way, folks, we have Brother Chuck on the program with us from his secret bunker out there. If you're wondering who Billy Bob was, hello, Chuck.
It's like, what on earth is going on here? No, it's an ADD thing. I can't say I'm amazed, but I am just how, like, Nadler going crazy, saying all that garbage about, calling, saying that, what's his name is just, about Lamar Alexander, about, how crazy it was and what he said. And I'm thinking, man, I've watched him a little bit, way back when, years ago, on TV, and he seemed to be even for being who he is, seemed to be an all right dude, like the way he would talk. But now, when you look at how all these facts are laid out and how he can deny that, he's just one of the swamp.
Yeah. Well, when we get back from break here, Brother Chuck, we're gonna discuss these things and get into more details. So, hey, glad you're aboard there, man. Good to hear you. Sorry you had to call in on this line, but the other line, Chuck, I'll have to tell you about it later. The old phone just took a poo, man.
I hate it when it happens.
Well, it's actually a good deal. That's why I need to tell you the story, because even though I got the latest, greatest updated phone, it cost me about $100 less on my bill, so you can't beat that.
Nice.
Yeah. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back right after this.
Smokehouse. To talk to Smokehouse, dial 712-770-3857. That number once again is 712-770-3857. Then dial 252-380, followed by the pound sign. Call in to join the show.
SmokehouseStudios.net. God is among us. The door to the ark is slamming shut.
Here's what the Holy Spirit said. He said, I have many ministers, and they are speaking on my behalf. But he said, what's missing is the urgency of their voice. these mega churches are really cognizant not to offend people. And they're really careful when they get up and preach to people that everybody leaves out there feeling really good. Preachers refuse to preach on the coming of Jesus Christ. Where's the urgency? I have never seen America in the place where we are right now. If you think that all the persecution is going to remain in Iraq against the Christians, you better think again. It's already coming into this country right now. If we don't tell people what they need to hear, God's going to hold us accountable and their blood will be on our hands. Whenever we preach, we've got to preach with an urgency in our voice that we need to be right with God if anything should happen to us. There's things right now in motion that may change our nation almost overnight. And for me to stand here and act like everything's all right, I can't do that. The politicians in Washington can do that and lead you to believe that everything's going to be okay. But in the house of God, there's got to arise a siren that says, blast, 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 attention, attention, attention. Things are changing and they're changing quickly. We've got to have preachers in the pulpit that will say, watch out! Warning! Warning! Red light! Warning! People know something's going on in the Middle East. They know something's going on in Iraq, in Iran, in Damascus. They know about Iran. And people that's not even scripturally literate are trying to answer these things, and they're missing in a million miles. And God's saying to the preachers, get up and tell them. It's time to talk about what God's doing. People are seeking the Lord. People are seeking Christ. And if they don't find Him in the church, where are they going to find Him? I have a question. Where is the urgency?
Things are going on in Iraq and Iran. They're still going after our embassies, friends. This is not over. And we're going to get to some important details on the coronavirus, the plague, the modern-day plague that is hitting our shores just as the Spanish flu did back in the day. Interesting how the Bible says that what's been done will be done again, what's happened will happen again. There's nothing new under the sun. When evil was being destroyed 100 years ago, the Ottoman Empire, pestilence and everything, war and everything else was breaking out. Just like evil is being dealt with now, pestilence, war, and everything else is breaking out. It's interesting, man. It really is. And there at the end, we had Brother Chuck call in on the Front Porch Show, and we've got him back aboard. Hello, Brother Chuck. How are you, buddy?
Hey, good, man. I'm trying to get used to that little bit of delay I hear.
Yeah, it's this phone system, man. It works well because you can have a volley of callers, but you have to take the good with the bad.
I feel like I'm losing my mind sometimes when I hear that echo and going, wow, is that like, am I hearing what's going on in my brain? Like the black hole, the echo?
well, how bad is the echo?
It's not that bad. It just, sometimes when you talk on your cell phone, you'll kind of hear that delay and you'll hear yourself talk right after that.
Yeah.
It kind of sounds like that, but thankfully it's not happening every single time I talk. Okay. It's just probably like every other or every third or fourth time. So I think I should be able to get through it.
Okay, well, I apologize, but until these new phones, Chuck, they don't have the headphone jack. However, you can buy a cord that plugs into the power jack that has the headphone jack on it. That did not come with the phone, so I was unaware of that. Yeah, so that'll be a purchase for another day, but we can make do. Glad to have you. Yeah,
that's right.
Okay, so. Adam Schiff, if you remember, Chuck, they had all of their private little meetings, and I'm not going to spend the whole show on this stupid impeachment, okay? I just want to cover a few important parts. But, they had everybody in secret, and everybody was being interviewed in that bunker under the grounds there, and the Democrats were only leaking out what they wanted leaked out. Well, there was one individual that was interviewed, and I believe it was 128 pages of his testimony that Adam Schiff would not release. And obviously he wouldn't release it because it wouldn't help Adam Schiff. And Senator Radcliffe was interviewed and had something interesting to say about this. Check this out.
All right. The intelligence community, Michael Atkinson, he was the second witness interviewed on October 4th. I was there. It's the one transcript out of 18 that hasn't been released. It's a 179-page transcript, and you can bet that if that transcript was helpful to Adam Schiff and the Democrats and harmful to President Trump, everyone would have seen it by now. But instead, it's just the opposite. It's the one transcript that talks about Adam Schiff and the whistleblower. Now, everyone knows by now that Adam Schiff was not truthful about his contacts with the whistleblower. What they don't know, and what's in that transcript, is that the whistleblower wasn't truthful about his contacts with Adam Schiff.
So he makes a valid point, Chuck. I mean, if there was any validity to anything, they would be running with it as though they were the third monkey on the ramp to the ark. You know it?
What's interesting is I watched a video compilation the other day, and it's got the part where Schiff was, allowing the people to speak, the different reps there, and every time it showed like that he would say, okay, go ahead, kind of give them thing, and they start talking, and they go, gentlelady will suspend, and slams his gas, and they're just kind of looking around each other like, this is such a joke, because every time somebody would try to say something, he didn't want them to say something, he's just like, okay, you'll give up your time, and then everybody's like, you just see the look on their face like, this can't really be happening. He can't really be like just trying to silence everybody like that. Just, okay, you'll suspend. Kind of just doing whatever he wants, just making up his own rules. Okay, you're done talking. I'm like, God, what a arrogant, God. And to watch him behave like that and then turn around and talk about how unfair it is when it's over, when the senators are they're doing this, they're doing the trial of the president, and how unfair they're being and how they won't allow all this and that. I'm sitting there thinking, all this coming from the guy that every time somebody would open their mouth, he'd slam the gavel down and say, okay, you'll give up your time now. Going, God, this guy's such a creep, man.
Well, I mean, exactly. But this is what it's all about. It's a charade. Did you see where they were calling for let me turn this up. Hang on a second.
Sure.
Having sound issues on this end, but we'll get it taken care of. But when Jerry Nadler, when they called for Adam Schiff's final statements, and Jerry Nadler got up and took off running up there.
I remember that, yeah.
And so, obviously here, Jerry Nadler is afraid of something. Something has him shook up. And I saw a person on Twitter put that clip of the video up, and of course they had muted the sound of it. And when Jerry,
I think I heard that clip because I think he was calling his name, like, hey, like I think Schiff was saying Jerry, like he was like trying to get his permission, like kind of get his attention so he could. I don't know if he was going to go up there or tell him something. I don't know.
Yeah, well, they had superimposed Chariots of Fire over that, when Jerry and they slowed it down.
That's funny.
Slow motion, man. It was Chariots of Fire, and I was cracking up. But
oh man, that's some funny. I'll have to watch that.
Well,
or listen to it.
But the important thing here is it's not the. We do know that lawlessness will be at work. The spirit of lawlessness will continue to be at work until the man of lawlessness is revealed. That's biblical.
Mm-hmm.
And all that is happening is Trump is exposing all this lawlessness out. He is showing to the American people that, look, this is the truth. This is what's really been going on. This is what we're battling. And he's just continually giving them rope and letting them hang themselves. That's what this is all about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether there's going to be a reckoning coming and all the corrupt are going to be rounded up, that remains to be seen. But until then, they're doing everything that they can do because they have no candidate, Chuck, to put up against Trump. None.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, I mean, they're just they're at the wit's end. A lot of people think Hillary's going to jump in and join the circus, and a lot of people.
I heard too, either her or Michelle Obama.
Yeah, well, I heard Joe Biden's probably going to call Michelle to be his vice president.
Yeah, but I think, well, here's the thing is with Biden, I mean, he messes, I mean, you watch the videos, he's almost sounding like old Nancy Pelosi when he starts talking, because it's like, blah, 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 like he's like stuttering and saying the same thing over, like he's just really having a hard time, you know, just bringing words. I mean, I have sometimes I have a hard time, you know, when I talk, but you know, just the way he's talking, there's really something going on in his mind. I don't know if he's losing his mind, because it doesn't make any sense. He goes, yeah, that, and up the hill, and I saw this. I'm like, well, what is he talking about? Just randomly, he'll just say stuff, kind of how Nancy does.
Yeah, and it's just like talking about his hairy legs and everything else.
Exactly, yep.
Their minds are not capable of, I don't know, man. There's something going on that's beyond our realm, you know what?
Yeah,
and
I would agree with that, because look what happened with you know, Hillary. I mean, she would just be randomly, she'd go into these weird face jerking arm, you know, and then she'll be all of a sudden like looking up, and like just it looks like her mind is just almost like she's having a hard time holding on like to reality, like her mind's just wandering. Her Nancy, really Maxine Waters is kind of getting like that, and then like you said, Joe Biden and stuff. It's really sad, you know. I don't say that kind of, you know, in a cruel, mean way, because they really, I feel bad watching them, and I'm kind of glad that they're not able to articulate the garbage they're trying to. You know, I don't wish bad stuff on them, but at the same time, I can see, it's almost like I see kind of God allowing this to happen, because it's like you just continue lying and lying and lying, you're going to have consequences for that. Well, you know, you're going to be so guilty, the guilt weighs on you. It messes with your bones and your health when you lie. So, I mean, it really, now I'm not a doctor, I can't tell you that's why it's happening, but it kind of makes you wonder that when you lie so much that there was not some type of spiritual thing that impacts your body and might actually be at least contributing to what we see going on.
Well, the veil's being lifted is what it is. I mean, that is the word of God. I mean, what'll be done in darkness will be shown in the light. And so we're seeing all that. Now, Chuck, last week and the week before last, we have been sharing Project Veritas's videos and that they have been putting out. And friends, if you're unaware of Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, he is the, I guess you could say, the president, CEO of Project Veritas. And and Chuck, by the way, buddy, in the depths of my necessity here, I have found the volume control that I have been searching for 2 months.
Did you clean house or what?
No, but I am now able to control you.
Well, that should make you happy. That's a very Democrat thing of you to do.
It does, and you know, Chuck, you know me. You've seen me, man. You know, I try to.
I always kind of thought you might be a secret rhino or something, or a wolf in sheep's clothing. Now it's coming out. Now we're seeing it.
But we were looking at Project Veritas, and he sends undercover people into like the Democrat campaign. And we played the clip that he shared a while back where the Bernie Sanders campaign manager was talking about, you know, burning down Milwaukee if Bernie does not get the nominee. And then if Trump wins the presidency, then his group is going to start burning down our cities. I mean, this is undercover reporting that is truth. Well, he has really...
Yeah, remember the gulags?
Yeah, he was going to put Trump supporters in gulags and re-educate them to adopt this new one-world globalist system. Now, we know it at some point it's going to happen. It's biblical. It's got to happen. It's been written. But is it going to happen now? Is it going to be put off for a while? We're just going to have to wait and see. I personally believe, and this is just my opinion, I believe that Israel is going to have to be put in the position that Israel needs to be in for the globalist agenda to take hold. And until then, it may be put off for a while. That's just my opinion. But Project Veritas now has released another undercover video, Chuck, of them talking about coming after us, conservative Christians, Trump supporters. Here we go.
Well, these people are motivated by fear. And if we mobilize and if we make a show of force and show that, like, hey, we're very, very strong and we've put in work and we're very powerful now, I think you'll have a good many people who are going to back down off of it, who are going to be so afraid that they're going to back down off that position.
So do you mean like armed resistance?
I hope. I mean, I don't think we're there yet, and I hope not, but just like a militant labor movement that's willing to, strike, and if necessary, just destroy property and things like that. That would be my escalation. Right?
All right, so they're going to be willing to destroy property and everything else. More of the same coming, Chuck, as the days grow longer. And now you understand why they want us disarmed, so that we can be overran.
You know what's interesting is you have the people, and especially a lot of these people who, live in the North or California, and these very liberal areas, and they have such a different view of guns. I think I mentioned that before compared to the South. Here we, respect the Constitution. We use arms to, hunt, and protect our homes. It's not uncommon to hear a bunch of shots in the background. People practicing or a turkey shoot or something like that. There's a lot of guns down here, obviously, and a lot of people know that. But it's amazing how different the culture is. From like the Democrat-controlled areas, and how people hear gunshots up there, they're, for the most part panicking. The average person, is it's like, oh, it must be a gang shootout or a police shooting. It's a whole different attitude when they hear gunshots versus, as a whole, what we hear. And so I can see their kind of resistance to guns because they've had such a bad experience, a lot of them, with guns. But it's just sad because that's kind of playing into the hands of these globalists that have that, where they want to disarm us so they can control us. Mm-hmm. So you have two different kind of camps, one that are scared of the guns because they think they're so bad, and then ones that, I guess, in a sense, are scared of the guns, but it's because they want to control everybody, and they want to be the only ones that have people with guns or themselves have guns.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and that's where it's headed. Well, Chuck, I want to say hello to two awesome people that came through Nashville yesterday on their way home to Indiana to stop and visit, and treated me to lunch at the Crackle Barrel, and I was tickled to death. And
nice.
Say hi to Mr. Bill and Sister Michelle up there in Indiana. They're tuning in tonight, and on our prayer request tonight, we have Sister Darlene who needs prayers. And there is a son of a friend of ours. His dad's name is Red, and his son needs prayer. And Red, the whole family needs prayer, so we need to pray for them as well. But a hello to Bill and Michelle. I wasn't even watching the clock, man. I was letting time get away. I didn't even know it was as late as it was. I apologize. I've got a lot going on this end. You've been here, Chuck, But
oh, yeah, there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
All right. So, if you were, and I say that as though you were watching CNN, you never would, but on CNN, Chuck.
No, of course not.
Yeah. Did you hear where Don Lemon and the crew were mocking Southerners, mocking Trump supporters?
It wouldn't surprise me.
Check this out, and we'll talk about it.
And obviously it's false. And look, he also knows deep in his heart that Donald Trump couldn't find Ukraine on a map if you had the letter U and a picture of an actual physical crane next to it. He knows that this is, an administration defined by ignorance of the world. And so that's partly him playing to their base and playing to their audience, the credulous boomer Rube demo that backs Donald Trump, that wants to think that Donald Trump's a smart one, and y'all elitists are dumb.
You elitists with your geography and your maps and your spelling.
even though Mike,
your math and your reading.
Yeah, you're reading. You know, your geography, knowing other countries, sipping your latte.
All those lines on the map.
Only the Melitas know where Ukraine is. Sorry, I apologize. But by the way,
oh my God!
But you know what? But it was Rick's fault. I blame Rick. But you know, but in all honesty,
blame
you know what
Rick.
NPR should
Why
do?
not? Sorry, hold on. Wait.
Can I tell you
give me a second? Hold on. Sorry. That was good. Sorry, Rick. That was a good one. I needed that. Okay, so listen. Let's get back to business here.
So there you go, Chuck. They're talking about us there, old bud.
You know, it's interesting because they're so educated, right? You know, that they can mock everybody else, but yet they turn around and quote sources that lie, straight out lie, and they don't investigate, but somehow they're the knowledgeable ones, right? Because they don't have a Southern accent that must make them educated. You know, it's funny because notice they said elitists, like the elitists, but they didn't really deny that. Like they consider themselves to be in that upper class, that aristocracy. You know, it's interesting how I think it's cool because when stuff like that happens, when they just go crazy and start laughing, that's like when the truth comes out. And then you can see, you know, because Trump says they're coming after me, but really they're coming after you. And that's an example of that, because you sit there and berate somebody like that, go on and on, mock them and stuff. You know their animosity is towards those who elected Donald Trump.
Right.
So, I mean, the fact that he said that what they were doing right there totally backs up that statement that he said. So,
well, you're exactly right. We got some important information real quick to kind of divert from the program, but Brother Robin was letting us know that I-80 eastbound at exit 6 in Wyoming is still closed due to a multiple vehicle accident Friday. He said that he is parked on the roadside with what appears to be hundreds of trucks backed up to the Utah line. Roads here are clear and dry, no blowing snow across the highway, even from the area surrounding the highway. Google has pictures of the accident, but are not clear due to poor visibility. The winter storm caused this wreck. So, Brother Robin is stranded on the side of the road there that's Evanston, Wyoming, if my memory serves me right. So, Brother Robin, man, I hate to hear that. About 20 years ago, I was stranded on I-80 back on the Utah side, about 10 miles from the Wyoming line. And it was about 10 degrees below zero, and the motor quit running, so we had no heat. And we had a load of onions in the back of the trailer, and we had to keep the reefer back there at about 50 degrees to keep the onions from freezing. And I had a co-driver, Chuck, there at the time, and he was a new guy in his early 20s, and he was a little freaked out. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and no one would stop. We'd holler at them on the CB, but they wouldn't stop to help us out. And so...
wow.
And it got so cold in there that our breath was freezing on the inside of the windshield. And, of course, we were sitting there in our coveralls in the truck, and he was like, what are we going to do? I said, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're not going to die. I said, we've got probably 3 or 4 days of diesel fuel left in that reefer. I said, we'll go back there and climb in that trailer and turn that thing up to about 70 degrees and stretch out.
You know, I have a lot of respect for truckers, man, because they go through a lot of stress driving between just the traffic and, like you said, the weather, different weather things you run into, and then sometimes they get harassed by cops, or it's just, I have a lot of respect for them, because if it weren't for them, we wouldn't have a lot of what we have, or just really about anything that we have, any goods or, so I really appreciate truckers even more when my parents started driving. I drove one time with them across, I think we drove from California, I don't know if it was from California, I think I rode with them from California to Kansas or something, and man, it was, gosh, the stuff that they go through, man, everybody, when they see truckers, should be like, man, thank you for what you do.
Amen. Amen. Well, one more about this impeachment that we're going to roll on, Chuck, because I know this is boring, but these are important things, friends, that we need to know about. Adam Schiff said that the American people cannot be the ones to decide the vote on this. We have.
I remember that.
Yeah, we have no right. Okay, it's we the people, but we have no right. They're the ones that choose. Check this out.
The president's misconduct cannot be decided at the ballot box, for we cannot be assured that the vote will be fairly won.
So there you go, Chuck. You know, the Democrats are the ones that are having illegal elections and the dead are voting and all of the other shenanigans. But, it's not the American people that get to decide at the ballot box. That's dangerous.
Yeah, when I remember hearing that, I was like, oh, my goodness. It's like, wow. I just hope and pray that people are paying attention to all that stuff. I know there are a lot of people who are. I hope and pray that more people are paying attention to what these people are saying. I know that he sat up there and talked and talked and talked and talked. I think he was up there for like 30, 40 minutes one time where I was like, man, he's saying the same thing over and over, and he's saying it a different way. And then, it's like, God, somebody I was hoping for one of those hooks to come out and just grab him around the neck and jerk him. Like, okay, you're done.
Well,
it's just really sad to hear him talk like that. And these people really think that. They think that they know better than everybody else and that they need to be the ones to decide. It's crazy.
Well, what's the Saul Lewinsky rule? You just keep repeating the lie over and over and over, and then people will start believing it. That's why they're doing what they're doing. They're following a script. They're following their playbook. But also, on the other hand, if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over, expecting a different result, that's the definition of insanity. So they're proving 2 points here. Okay, we're getting to the coronavirus, the plague that has reached our shores now. And an interesting thing had happened. The FDA and the feds, are you familiar with the Purell hand sanitizer, Chuck?
Yeah, I heard a little bit about that.
Well,
I know about Purell, but I was hearing about what they were saying, just a little bit about what you're about to talk about.
All right. Well, we're getting, supposedly, video coming out of China. People, because China's communist, they're not allowed to be on certain websites, and they're blocked from sending out information onto the web. But many people on their phones are sending videos of people dropping dead in the streets, and I have seen probably 30 to 40 different videos of this. And a lot of them, they're wearing coats and whatnot, but a large portion of them, these videos that are coming out showing people in masks running around in summer clothes. They're running around in short sleeve shirts and some of them in shorts. Some of the videos you can actually see greenery in the background. And right now, it's wintertime in China. It's in the 20s. Last week it was in the 20s all week. So is there something about the Asian body that's different than the American body? Can they handle cold weather a little differently than we do, and they can run around in short sleeve shirts when it's 20 degrees? I don't know, but my point is, are we getting the truth that's coming out of China? And the actions that are being taken here in the United States does not seem to accommodate the threat that's coming out of China. Now, yes, here recently, Trump has now initiated flight restrictions for people coming in from that area. But for a long time, nothing was being done. People from China were being allowed to fly all over the earth. And people weren't taking it seriously. Now, when you go and you look at programs, I won't mention any names because, I believe people's hearts are in this for the right reason. But a lot of these programs that are preaching gloom and doom on this coronavirus, they, on their programs, sell bug-out supplies. They sell storable foods. They sell things that you would need in situations like that. So it would stand to reason they would look to the cataclysmic end of this, you know? But after seeing a lot of the videos coming out, and then this latest episode with Purell. Purell, as y'all know, is the hand sanitizer, the alcohol-based hand sanitizer. And, on their description of their product, it states all of the things, bacteria-wise and virus-wise, that it kills, of which is Ebola and the coronavirus. Now, the FDA and the feds had a meeting with the owners of Purell, wanting them to pull those statistics down, pull that down, that their product will kill these things, right? And the Purell executives told the feds, we're not going to do it because we have scientists that prove that our product kills these things. So we're going to leave it up.
Wow.
Now, this is factual. Matter of fact, Richie from Boston, I'm going to share his. Listen, he shared a little bit of this. Check this out.
This popped up yesterday, and note the time, 10:37 a.m. Well, at 9:30 a.m. yesterday, I was on the phone with Nicholson 1968, who happens to have a source at this company, Purell. Now, Purell is not traded on the stock market. Purell is a privately held company. Well, one of the chemists at Purell sent me these yesterday. And I sent these to somebody else in case something were to happen to myself or Nicholson. But long story short is the FDA is trying to pressure Purell, a privately owned company, to take down this information. Now, the person that Nicholson talked to the scientists that actually test this stuff. This is not traded on the stock market. It's a privately owned company. And Purell hand sanitizer and Purell surface spray absolutely, without a doubt, kill the coronavirus. And the FDA wants them to pull this. Now, why is this important? Why did this start yesterday? Exactly like we knew it was going to? Because it isn't going to be the virus that kills anybody, because the virus is nothing. This is all staged. This is all the leaks coming out of China. Exactly like we theorized, all of this is the annual fear and panic parade. Every year, it's Zika, it's swine flu, it's avian bird flu, it's the coronavirus. Well, it isn't going to be the virus that takes people out. It's going to be the mandatory vaccine that comes along, and that is a fact. This is why I'm showing you this. This is why all the owners, all the CEOs, all the top people at Purell had to be flown in for a meeting yesterday with the FDA so they could be told to stop doing this. But the thing is they aren't going to stop doing this. The thing is some of them actually watch my channel and channels like mine and sent this information out. This virus can be killed by a simple hand sanitizer. Period.
All right, Chuck. So what say you now? What does that sound like to you? Does that sound like this is really a serious thing, or they're just trying to put panic so they can set into place mandatory evacuations for everybody?
I think it's from a little bit that I've looked into it, they say that the coronavirus has kind of been around for a while. It's just this particular one's a different strand of it. Or, I guess it kind of like mutates and becomes something else. And it's interesting because I know that, I really believe that the government, they love to control people through vaccines and, forcing them to take stuff. And, you get the inserts that talks about what's in them. Most of the time, the places, when you ask them, will say they're out. They don't have them. And you have to kind of press them and say, hey, I want to know what's in this stuff. And if you're able to actually get, what's in it, the insert, you'll be really surprised to find out all the garbage they put in these things. And you realize why a lot of people's health is so bad, and especially people who get flu shots and these random other, periodical, the shots. Like when we're going through school, you'd have to have your shot records, and you'd have to get certain shots at certain times. I unfortunately got most all the ones that I was supposed to get. I think get my booster shot. I remember that, and it still hurts to think about it. But I really think that they are up to trying to poison the general public and really mess them up. It's not a conspiracy theory, because here's the thing. This is why it's not hard for me to believe it, because the heart of man is desperately wicked beyond all things.
Mm-hmm.
So if people aren't submitted to God, they're not Christians, and they don't have that ethic of not taking advantage of the fact that people may not have knowledge, or they may go, okay, well, you're somebody who's in that position, so we trust you. They don't respect that people trust them and believe that they're out there for their good. And so when you start questioning that, now you're a conspiracy theorist. You start using your brain, you're a conspiracy theorist. That's what they use to kind of shut it all down. So if you think about it for a minute, people who don't know God, either what we see happening in our government right now, they either are straight out deceiving people because they're so wicked, they're just all about doing that, or they themselves don't, their knowledge of reality is just slipping away. So either one of those is not good, especially when it comes to people putting stuff in shots, and there's not the ethics of doing it responsibly and doing the right thing. There's so much involved with the money. So I always second guess things, because you really have to. You have to look into it, because especially when you have a family and kids, you want to know the kind of garbage that the people are trying to peddle, and you'd be really surprised to find out how much there is out there. But that's everybody's responsibility to look into that. So I'm saying, I really believe that's not hard for me. I'll say all that to say it's really not hard to believe that I think that that's really what they're up to. They're up to pushing these forced vaccinations. I think that's really what's behind all this.
Well, I think it is too. And the reason I say that is because maybe, now this is speculation here. I know they're censoring everybody and you're not allowed to say anything anymore in the United States. So I'm speculating. But all right, well, what have we seen from them? Okay, they'll be known by their fruit. If we go back to the Word of God, they have all of these mass shootings, and then what do we have? We start having gun control laws. And the gun control laws, even though they're unconstitutional in these democratic states, they're succeeding in at least getting them passed through the legislation. Now, the people are not complying, okay, which we don't have to, because it's a fraudulent law. But the point is they're getting their things pushed through. They cause the problem, and then they create the solution. Now, right now, I'm going to give you an example. Right now in Virginia, they've got all these unconstitutional gun laws, and they had their Second Amendment rally to say they're not going to comply. Everything is settled down. The Virginia governor hasn't initiated anybody to go out and start taking guns away from the American people in Virginia. However, the law is there in place. It may be 5 or 10 years before they decide to come after and start disarming people. Okay? But the point is, the law right now, they've got it in place in Virginia. Now, they create the problem, and then they create the solution. But the solution is not to the problem they created. The solution is to aid them in their next step of taking us into captivity. Same way with this virus. They create the problem, and when there is something as simple as a hand sanitizer that could create this problem they created, well, they want that information silenced. They don't want the American people to know that. They want the American people to be scared because they have created a problem, and they're going to create a solution by implementing these mandatory vaccinations. Now, if they do mandate a mandatory vaccination, probably right now, if everybody gets vaccinated, there probably won't be anything in this vaccine but sugar water or something to kill this little virus that's going around, and everybody goes back home. Nobody gets sick. Nobody dies from it. Everybody's cool. But they now have a mandatory inoculation vaccine law on the books. Now, if you want to rid the world of 63 million people at one time, How could you do it? They've already got the mandatory vaccine law in place. So the next time, which may be 5 or 10 years down the road, like the gun control analogy, they have another virus that comes out. And now everybody has to be mandatory vaccinated, which the people are like, okay, there's no big deal because nothing happened when we got vaccinated this last time. However, this vaccine has got the one in it that's going to kill 65 million people one shot. Wow. Theory. I'm just speculating here. That's the way it looks to me because we have gun control to go on.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I mean, I don't think that could be far from the truth because if you think about the way they operate, you know, like you said, they're all about fear. Get everybody freaked out. You know, you never let a good tragedy go to waste.
Right.
You know, they'll always do that, those horrible things. And it makes sense because really, man wants to control. You know, like the Tears for Fears song. You know, everybody wants to rule the world. It's
Right.
kind of there's so much truth in that song. You know, in that part, and you just think of it because we're saying the heart of man is desperately wicked beyond all things. Who can know it? And what was the devil cast out of heaven for?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like it's the same thing, trying to take over, trying to rule everything. So knowing the heart of man and knowing kind of what they do, I don't think it's far. It's a far stretch to think that what you're saying could be what they're doing.
Well, Richard sent me something very interesting, all right? A link to a Google article that says there has been a run on surgical masks in the U.S. because of the coronavirus scare. You don't need them, physicians say. So Americans now are freaking out. They're running out, and they're buying these masks. But here's the problem. Okay, the problem is that now China needs them so bad, they're buying up every mask that they can, and now they're buying bulk from the United States, and the masks over here are running out. But physicians are telling Americans, well, you don't need masks. Well, then why are the Chinese buying it if we don't need it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
Here's another theory, okay? Could they be wanting to eradicate sections at a time, like right now, put out a minuscule virus in China that won't necessarily kill healthy people, but the elderly and the young, it'll kill them, okay? There's your handful of deaths to scare people. Have all the masks ship over to China because that's where the problem is, and now America don't have any masks, and then boom, they drop a virus over here where we need masks, but there are none. You see what I'm saying here? I mean, I know I'm getting a little tin hat here, but we know the Bible tells us that in the last days, these things are going to happen. And we would not be a proper watchman if we did not alert you and show you all the scenarios that we could possibly come up with.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's not far from what could be happening. I mean, any one of those are what you just said, because it really, if you just use your brain and think about what, you know, if a certain scenario were to happen, like, you know, what, you're just playing through the different scenarios, like if something like that happened, and as, like you said, they're buying up all the masks, if it spreads and takes off here, they won't have that protection from it in a sense as far as from the respiratory aspect. I heard that it passes through bodily fluids too.
Right.
And there's, you know, the whole California thing where they're pooping and peeing on the streets in San Francisco, and how they're having the pressure wash the stuff off the streets, and there's a huge infestation of rats, like really bad, and how it's like, I think that what they say that I'm trying to think of the two things that were happening there. What's one of the two main things that happens from rodents and the spreading?
Well, you get leprosy and you get the plague. Typhus. You get typhus, leprosy, and the plague from rodents and stuff like that.
Yeah, the bubonic plague.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they were saying that there's the two different things that are starting to pop up now because of the rodents. But I was saying with the whole this virus, or this recent one going around, that it can actually spread through the, you know, feces or your body's excrements, and if they wash that down, it goes into the storm drains. Where does that go? Into the drinking water. So that's really quick to spread it. And they said too, if I remember right, they said that the incubation period or whatever, it could take 7-8 days before you even have the effects of it, like the not the effects of it, but the, you know, what happens when you start getting it. and for it even to be detected. So even when they're stopping the people on the planes, they may have it, but they're not going to hold them for a week to see if they get sick.
Mm-hmm.
So if they do have it here, they could already be here and not even manifest themselves until they're already home.
Yep.
So there could be a lot more cases actually going on that we even know about. So, but that being said, really, we as Christians, we don't fear stuff. We need to be educated, and like what we're doing, we're talking about it. We're talking about the possibilities. What if this? And maybe they're up to this. We're just talking about scenarios to get people's minds thinking, because that's one thing the globalists and mainstream media, they don't want you to do. They don't want to use you to use your brain. They want you to use their brain,
right?
And rely on what they say. Don't have any confidence that you can think for yourself. And I think somebody, when they're really doing what's ethically responsible, is people should be encouraging you to use your own mind and not giving you all the answers, but saying, "Hey, check this out. Look into this."
Amen. So something to consider, folks. Something to consider. Well, Chuck, the Lord, every time we have something bad, there's always something good that rises up. And I was talking to Brother Robin on the phone, and he was we had brought up, the how we're seeing a biblical pattern here. Cyrus, when he sent the people out of bondage back into Israel, he then took all of the riches from Nebuchadnezzar that he had stole from God's people. He took the riches from the wicked and he blessed God's people. And we see when the children left Egypt back in Exodus, that we have the pattern of God taking the riches from the wicked and giving it to his people. And now we're at a place where we're seeing now all of this corruption coming to a head, and Trump signing all of these executive orders to seize all assets from those who have been guilty of human trafficking and crimes against humanity, corruption, and all of that. So, if they're arrested and found guilty, then all of their riches are going to come back into our treasury. Okay, which is a possibility here. And we know that with the children of Israel, that was the last thing that happened, and then they were sent to the Promised Land. But they had to go through their wilderness. I believe we're going to have to go through ours. But with God doing these things, as we go closer toward the last of days, he starts showing himself. And I was talking to Robin about this, and while we were talking about the children of Israel exiting out of the Exodus here, and God protecting them while they did this, just like he will protect us now as we go through these diseases, because our doctor is not a vaccine. Our doctor is the great physician. Don't ever forget that. And
that's right.
He will be with us in this wilderness, people. And Robin had mentioned how when the children of Israel, God parted the Red Sea, and then when the enemy and the army came after God's people, God brought the sea in on them, and they all drowned. And Robin's like, well, you do know they're finding artifacts, chariots and wheels and swords and stuff in the bottom of the Red Sea that has been there since that time, proving that this actually happened, right? Well, check this out, Chuck. Just right up the road here at Mammoth Cave, Kentucky. Not even 80 miles north of us here. This week, an article comes out. Sharks in Kentucky? ? Explorers have found in Mammoth Cave is blowing researchers' minds, okay? They have researchers, because they're constantly exploring Mammoth Cave. Mammoth Cave is not officially fully explored. There's still caverns that dart off that it'll be hundreds of years before they can find all of them. But during a trip to Mammoth Cave National Park in November, paleontologist John Paul Hondet was stunned. Preserved in the walls of the cave were parts of a large fossilized shark head from a shark that lived about, they're saying 330 million years ago. But the discovery began when Mammoth Cave specialists Rick Olson and Rick Toomey came across the fossils as they explored and mapped the cave system. They sent photos to Vincent Santucci, the senior paleontologist for the National Park Service in Washington, D.C., for help identifying the fossils. Santucci then sent Hondet, a paleontologist and program coordinator at Dinosaur Park in Maryland, to help with what became the Mammoth Cave National Park Fossil Shark Research Project. And they are finding evidence of sharks, saltwater sharks, in the depths of the caverns of Mammoth Cave.
Wow.
So what does that tell us, Chuck? Tells us
well,
that,
if you think about it, the whole Earth is flooded. Everything would be everywhere, right? All the ocean life would be, going wherever there was water, and there was all water everywhere back then. So that would make sense. That would be, I think it's cool when they find stuff like that, especially when you understand what the Bible says about what happened back then, how the whole Earth was covered with water. So, because you look at like some of the, even out here, we've got rocks with little sea life stuff in there. Like
right.
The little, what is it? My son will be able to tell you all the little things. The little things look like roly-polies, but they're kind of like stretched out with the little legs. You see a lot of those things in the rocks. You're like in the different chunks of sediment stuff around here. That not sediment, but you know what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah, I know exactly.
This is beyond my vernacular to say all these different words. Basically just the rocks. You look at them, you see all these little lice in there. I think it's cool to know that the Bible, know what it said, and go, oh, okay, that kind of backs up what the Bible said about the whole world flooding. So,
right. Yeah. Well, that's what they found in Mammoth Cave, man, and what that goes,
really cool.
Yeah, and what that goes to show is that there's evidence of a flood. I mean,
wow.
How much more do you need? I mean, what's
right.
Where is the closest ocean to Mammoth Cave, Kentucky, Chuck?
Yeah, it's more than a hop, skip, and a jump.
Yeah. So it's these things right here, people. It's these type of things that, as a Christian, it makes us. I don't know, man. It just boils this intensity in my spirit. I know it does you.
Yeah, I think it's cool because we read the Bible and we see what it says, and it's cool when you see scientific proof that backs up what the Bible says. We already know it's true because God is God's word, so He's going to always tell us what's true. Because He says, if it's not true, I wouldn't tell you it is.
Right.
So, but it's just really cool to actually see it, even though you know that. It's really cool because you believe by faith, but it's kind of cool to have some tangible evidence to back that up. So, especially when you're talking to people who don't really believe, it's kind of cool to say, hey, look, the Bible says, da-da-da-da, and then look, here's proof.
Yeah. Well, more signs of these type of things. What was one of the plagues, Chuck, in Egypt? They had a plague of locusts during that time.
I saw the video footage of that, too. I was like, whoa, and they're everywhere. They're trying to keep them from eating stuff, and they're just like, it's like, wow, it looks like something out of a movie.
It does. We have seen these locust plagues in various areas before. This is nothing new, okay? But, friends, right now, over in Africa, this is levels that you can only describe as being biblical. I mean, uncontrolled swarms of devouring locusts to hit East Africa, Middle East, and Southwest Asia in no time, leaving behind barren earth. The pictures of these things, like Chuck was saying, the picture on this article, there is a man what looks like is standing on a path in the woods, and the locusts are so thick you can barely see him. It's as though he is standing. I tell you what it looks like. Chuck, down there in South Carolina, down in that area where they got that moss hanging off the trees?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it looks like. That's how thick these locusts are.
Well, what makes me think, too? It makes me think, it talks about a locust, but it talks about the when all the food's gone.
Right.
The
right.
famines, and I'm thinking, man, you got the locust, but then they're going to eat everything, so there's not going to be food for a lot of people.
Right.
No.
Well, it says, and it's pretty much exactly what has been forecasted for an enormous region reaching from Somalia, Ethiopia, and Kenya. It's hit right now to Egypt, Sudan, Saudi Arabia, and Yemen. Okay, now keep in mind, these are all the areas that have been coming against Israel. Let's not forget that. What did the Bible tell us? Those who bless Israel, God will bless, and those who curse Israel, God will curse. So,
wow.
I mean,
that's incredible.
we just found evidence of shark fossils in Mammoth Cave, man, proving there was a flood. And now, God's word saying that what you do to Israel will be done to you. If you bless Israel, you'll be blessed. If you curse Israel, you'll be cursed. And these areas, Kenya, Ethiopia, Somalia, all these areas, Iranian-controlled, Hamas, the terrorist, and all that, and now they're having a plague of locusts. And you cannot make this stuff up. Now, I will say this, Chuck. Being a large commercial freight redistribution engineer, such as myself, and traveling our nation's highways, as I have been for an eon of years, out there in the Kingman, Arizona area, Robin out there, he'll back this up. I think it's like an 11-year cycle or a 7-year cycle. They have a grasshopper apocalypse out there. We just had one a few years ago out in Nevada. Okay. And it's vicious. I mean, it's not as bad as the pictures we're seeing coming out of Africa, but I do know that pulling into those truck stops, Chuck, and squishing all those grasshoppers, it is so slick in that parking lot. It's like driving on ice. I mean, yeah, that's
interesting. I used to live in the Southern California mountains, like up in Running Springs and the Green Valley Lake, and I remember not that there was that many, but there was a lot of those little frogs that come out.
Yeah,
and they would just be all. There was a little area where the water would drain down the mountain off the ski resort hills, and there's a little area it's called like a little check dam, where it's like a little area right before it went into the lake where they had the dam, and there was tons of frogs. I remember thinking, dang, they're everywhere. They're jumping. It made me think of I think about that, about how it was in Egypt with the plague of frogs, and it's kind of interesting to think about that. How it must have been with them all over the place.
Right.
It's a mess.
Oh, I know. It's terrible, man. Well, Chuck, I want to cover this real quick, man.
All right.
As you know, I am a ham operator, and I have my my amateur radio license, which is cool, man. You can talk all over the world. It's a lot of fun. Sometimes I post videos on Facebook. By the way, hello, Jane Lee. Thank you for tuning in, girl. Good to see you. She fired us off a message.
It's kind of cool.
Huh?
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, she fired us off a message to let us know she was tuning in, so I got to give her a big hello. We grew up together. She's a good friend of mine.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I think it's cool that you talk to people around the world. It gives you a really unique perspective. And when you talked about, I don't know how, probably, I imagine, because you're all interested in this stuff, that you probably kind of bounce stuff off them and ask them questions. It's kind of cool to be able to directly talk to people there on the ground. And get their perspective.
Well, it is, especially like during this Virginia gun saga that they're going through. Everything that you read, whether it be articles on Facebook or people tweeting, whatever you call it, what's coming out of Virginia, I can actually get on the radio and talk to people there in Virginia on the ground right then and get the truth. So. It does.
That's very cool.
But this caught my attention just for the simple fact that I'm a ham operator. Many of us are aware of shortwave radio, okay? And shortwave radio is in ham radio has frequencies allocated, to the operators within the shortwave bands, okay? The shortwave band runs from like 1 megahertz all the way up to 14 to 17 megahertz and all through there, and there are people what is called pirates, okay, who get on these frequencies and run these pirate radio stations. They play music, just like a regular radio station. And the FCC here recently, especially under Obama administration, has been real laxed. I mean, because there's laws against that, man. It's illegal because you have to be licensed. So if you get on there and you pirate radio, the Federal Communications Commission has not really been out there enforcing these laws. So these people have been broadcasting illegally and getting away with it. This caught my attention for a host of reasons, and let me share this with you. On Friday, January 24th, 2020, the president signed into law Bill H.R. 583. And what this is this is preventing illegal radio abuse through Enforcement Act, or the Pirate Act, which authorities enhanced penalties for pirate radio broadcasters and requires the Federal Communication Commission to increase enforcement activities. And Executive Order H.R. 2476, the Securing American Nonprofit Organization Against Terrorism Act of 2019, which authorizes within the Department of Homeland Security a nonprofit security grant program to make grants to eligible nonprofit organizations for target hardening of other security enhancements to protect against terrorist attacks. Now, you can get on here and you can look at this bill that has been issued, okay? I call it an executive order. My apologies. Let me clarify. It's a bill. Okay, Chuck, what this is now is a bill for the FCC to start doing their job and enforce these pirate radio stations on these frequencies, right?
Mm-hmm.
But do you want to know what two of the major laws are that you have to learn if you get your ham radio license? And this includes if you just get the level 1 license. I've got the top level. I've got level 3, okay? But even if you go for just the entry level license, you have to know this law that it is illegal for you to transmit propaganda. It's illegal for you to transmit lies. It's illegal for you to transmit any type of threats or any type of comments that would invoke violence. Okay? Now, I'm going somewhere with this, which means I cannot get on there and tell lies about you on ham radio. Or any frequency for that matter, okay? That is a crime. Mm-hmm. And if the FCC finds out about it, they can come and investigate. And if you're found guilty, then they can charge you with a penalty. They can confiscate your radio equipment. You have to pay thousands and $1,000 in fines. Now, I forget where he was at, but there was a gentleman who was on a 2-meter repeater purposely interfering, okay, not allowing people to talk. They found him, and this was an article on the ARRL amateur radio website. They found him, confiscated all of his equipment, and he got charged an $18,000 fine.
Wow.
Now, with Trump enacting this, this also applies not only to pirate radio, but if he's going to allocate the FCC now to get off the couch and do what they're hired to do, not only will he be going after the pirate broadcaster, but he'll be going after people that's purposely lying and doing all these other things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Chuck, news networks are also governed under FCC laws as well, because there has to be a license holder for that. He has to be a station.
Wow.
Wait a minute. Now listen, you've got to each station that broadcasts, over FCC controlled frequencies. There has to be a station licensee that holds the license for that frequency.
Wow. Well, CNN's in trouble.
Well, that's my whole point. Could these bills, and I'm just saying, I'm speculating here, could these bills be to, okay, this is a simple bill. Okay, self-explanatory. It's going after those that are illegally pirating and transmitting on frequencies they're not supposed to. But also, if he initiates this, it's going to initiate the FCC to enforce the rest of the rules that's been on the books for hundreds of years. Well, I wouldn't say hundreds of years. Radio hadn't been around but about 100 years. Here I am.
Long time.
Here I am lying, man.
I'm like, wait a second.
But so my point is, not right now. Get this bill passed to go after the pirate radio broadcasters. Get the FCC back in the groove, going after those that are illegal operating, and then boom, enforce laws already on the existing books. Oh, by the way, CNN, you've been purposely lying and spreading propaganda. You've been initiating Antifa across FCC frequencies. This is a crime that has been for close to 100 years. You've committed, or Trump yanks their FCC license and they no longer can broadcast, and all their equipment gets seized.
Oh, thank God.
I'm just
forward to that.
I'm just saying here, man. Speculating here.
Right. It would also make sense. I mean, outside the fact that they hate Trump for calling them out for being a bunch of liars anyway, that would be definitely more fuel in their more wind in their sails to try to get rid of Trump, because that would definitely shut them down. So. One can only hope that that's what would happen.
Well, that's
it's just sad because I understand when people are used to breaking the law why they wouldn't like somebody. It's like with anything, when you're doing something wrong, it hurts to be corrected. It's just so important to be willing to receive the correction. That's why we need God to help us to be humble when we mess up, that we're willing to, repent and ask Him, basically just like you said, it means turning away from something, turning away from a certain behavior and doing the right thing. Stop continuing to mess up. And it really just helps everybody. Our government needs it. That's why they set up these different, branches to keep each other in check. And it's so important to do that because we all need accountability. And the reason why the news and the government's the way they are is because there's laws there, but they're not being enforced. So the greatest thing that can happen really to our country, one of the greatest things, is for them to start enforcing the law, I believe.
Amen. And hey, like I said, we've got some exciting days ahead. The vote, Chuck, for whether to acquit the president or send him packing, supposedly as of right now, is going to be on Wednesday of this week. So we all need to be in prayer for Brother Trump and his family.
Yeah.
We need to pray against the spiritual wickedness in high places, the principalities, and If you're a preacher, I say this all the time, but if you go to church tomorrow and your preacher is not praying against the evils in our government, and he refuses to do so, we can't pray politics. The Black Robe Regiment did during the Revolutionary War. However, that's what principalities means. It means rulers, governors, those who rule over us, And there's spiritual wickedness. We do not battle the flesh. We battle powers, principalities, spiritual wickedness in high places. So Trump. Why do I do that, Chuck? I just called you Trump again. How many weeks in a row has this been?
I don't know, man. Maybe that as long as it's the good stuff he's saying and not the boneheaded stuff he's saying, I'll receive it. It just, and I mean all respect to President Trump. I love him. I appreciate him. But I don't know why I said that, but that I don't know. I don't know why you keep calling me that. I don't know if you're getting a little senile there or what.
It's at the end of every show. I call you Trump, and it's crazy.
You got Trump on the brain, man.
I guess. Well, I just glanced down there at the clock, man, and I have got to.
You said, man, we're going over time.
Yeah. Why don't you lead us in a closing prayer, and when we come back, friends, we'll close this out, and message be yours.
All right. Dear Lord, I just thank you so much for today. Thank you for the awesome privilege, Lord, of being able to discuss and talk about what's going on in the world, and to do it from a perspective of we're looking through your word, God, looking through the lens of truth. God, I pray you would help us always to love the truth. Help us when we discuss the truth, Lord, to always care about the people we talk about never to get ugly and get personal and attack people and their physical appearance or anything like that. I know that we don't, but I just pray you would always keep us doing that, going the right path and doing what's right. Lord, I pray you bless everybody who listens, Lord. Help us all to believe the truth. Help us, Lord, to have the courage to continue to speak the truth, Lord, no matter where we're at, whether we're at church or whether out pumping gas or doing groceries. Lord, I pray that we would just take every opportunity to share about you, Lord, and about how awesome you are and how much you love us, God. Pray that you would lead us all in your truth, God, in all that we do. And guide, direct our week, Lord. Help us to just meditate on you and set our minds on things that are good and pure and praiseworthy. In the name of Yeshua. Amen.
Amen, brother. Good prayer. Good prayer.
Yeah.
Well, Chuck, it's good to have you, buddy. I guess you got a full week ahead of you this week.
Yeah, I just be a prayer for my back too. I threw my back out a few days ago, and I've been feeling like I'm about 90 years old trying to get up out of bed. For some reason, when I sit down and I got to stand up, that's the hardest time. I got some kind of lower back stuff going on. So anybody out there, I appreciate any prayers you can offer for me. It's getting a little bit better, but boy, I got this like dull kind of pain going on, and the Lord give me strength. He's already got it taken care of, but does he give me strength to get through this time?
All right. Well, if it makes you feel any better, you don't look a day over 89, old bud.
I appreciate that, man. You are the best. What do you call that? I don't know. Yeah. Thanks.
Well, I'm just telling you, I don't pull anybody's leg. If I was to pull your leg, the only thing left would be a bloody stump. I just shoot from the hip.
Well, I appreciate that. It's always good to speak the truth and cut as deep as you can, right?
I hear you, man. Yeah, we'll be in prayer for that. But did you damage like the cartilage in it, or did you just pull a muscle?
I hurt my back several times. Once when I was really young, I was walking in a creek and slipped and fell, and then I was playing with my kids about a couple of years back, and a tree branch snapped and I fell down on the ground and on the sidewalk and damaged my back, and so I had to get adjusted. And I had that sciatic pain for a while, for a couple months, and so just about once a year or once every 2 years it comes up and my back will go out of place, and man, I'm glad it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, I know what I'm in for. So.
Well, when I was working for a company about 15 years ago, I was flatbedding, and I had been over to pick up my tarp. And and standing up with that tarp, you're supposed to squat and stand up with your legs. Well, I just bent over and stood straight up like you're not supposed to. Of course, Jane Lee's a nurse, and she's probably going to send me a nasty message. You're not supposed to stand up like that. But I did, and I felt something like that cartilage in between you. I felt it pop out and right back in. Now it didn't.
Oh, wow.
It didn't lodge or anything. It just, and it went back in perfectly. But boy, for like 2 months after that, it was sore and it healed and all that. But every now and then, I'll do something and kind of aggravate it, and it'll be sore for another month or two, and it gets better. So I know how you're feeling.
Well, it's interesting because I wasn't even picking anything up. I would just kind of wash in my concrete truck, and I just lean over the side a little bit. It was like somebody hit me with an ice pick right in my lower back. I was like, oh.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
And I didn't sneeze. I didn't pick anything up. I was just moved a certain way, and man, it must have been just the right scenario. So.
No,
it'll be good, and it makes me think. I just look forward to when God gives us our new bodies.
Oh yeah.
And also, I was telling my buddy today. I'll tell you real quick. It really helps me realize that the Bible says, "Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days will come when you shall say, I have no pleasure in them." Basically saying, get tight with God, because when the time comes when your body starts falling apart, you're going to really appreciate that, because it's going to give you the right perspective. You'll be a miserable old grouch, because your body's falling apart. You'll just go, well, hey, this is part of what happens. I look forward to going to heaven. So, or looking forward to our heavenly bodies.
All right, man. Sounds good, Chuck. Good advice. Good to hear from you, brother. And
yeah, bro, good to be on the show.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Until next time, I am Old Smokehouse.
And I'm Chuck Bird.
And we'll catch you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Smokehouse.
To talk to Smokehouse, dial 712-770-3857. That number once again is 712-770-3857. Then dial 252-380, followed by the pound sign. Call in to join the show.
SmokehouseStudios.net. God is among us. The door to the ark is slamming shut.